Admiral Velthar adjusted his ceremonial battle cloak as the proximity alarms echoed through the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath. His 6 eyes focused on the tactical display, showing a single blip approaching their patrol sector. After 30 years of service, he'd seen countless primitive species attempt to cross Imperial borders. This would be another routine capture. Contact classification, Sensor Officer Clickstar. Velthar's voice carried the authority of someone who'd never lost a battle. The reptilian officer's scales shifted from green to nervous yellow. Sir, the vessel appears to be of human origin. Database indicates they're a Class 7 primitive species from the Sol system. Single ship, approximately 200 meters in length. Velthar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Humans were barely worthy of Imperial attention, a species that had only recently achieved crude faster-than-light travel using chemical propulsion. Their ships were laughably primitive compared to Imperial antimatter technology. Standard interception. Protocol, he commanded. Signal the human vessel to halt and prepare for inspection. If they refuse, disable their pathetic engines. The communications officer, a blue-skinned Andorian with 4 arms, quickly transmitted the Imperial Authority codes. The response came back negative. The human ship continued its steady approach toward the restricted military zone. Typical. Primitive arrogance, Velthar muttered. Weapons Officer Zonkar fire warning shots across their bow. Show them Imperial might. The Sovereign's Wrath unleashed a barrage of plasma fire that could melt asteroid belts. The brilliant orange energy bolt streaked across space toward the small human vessel. Velthar expected to see the primitive ship scrambling to change course or broadcast surrender signals. Instead, the plasma bolts simply vanished when they struck the human ship's hull. What? Velthar's voice cracked. Scan that vessel immediately, Sensor. Officer Clickstar's scales went completely white, a sign of absolute terror in his species. Sir, the energy readings are impossible. Their hull appears to be absorbing our plasma and converting it to some form of exotic matter. I'm detecting 0 damage. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of Imperial technology. Velthar had never encountered a ship that could absorb plasma fire. Even the most advanced Imperial shields would show some fluctuation when hit by weapons designed to crack moons. Perhaps their shields are simply more advanced than anticipated, Velthar said, though doubt crept into his voice. Deploy the disable beam. Target their engine core. The Sovereign's Wrath activated its most powerful non-lethal weapon, a gravitational pulse designed to shut down any known propulsion system. The invisible beam struck the human vessel with enough force to disable an entire fleet. The human ship didn't even slow down. Sir, the communications officer's 4 arms flailed in panic. We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. On screen, Velthar ordered, straightening his uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with dark hair and calm, intelligent eyes. He sat in what appeared to be a command chair, but the background behind him looked unlike any starship bridge Velthar had ever seen. Strange geometric patterns seemed to shift and flow along the walls. This is Captain Li Huan of the United Earth Survey vessel, Horizon, the human said in perfect Imperial standard. His voice carried no fear, no aggression, just mild disappointment. Imperial vessel, you are firing obsolete weapons at our hull. Please cease before you embarrass yourselves further. Velthar's pride flared. Human, you have violated Imperial space. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Captain Li Huan tilted his head slightly, the way one might look at a child throwing a tantrum. Admiral, we've been monitoring. Your weapons fire. Your plasma cannons operate at approximately 2.7 terajoules per burst. Your disable beam generates roughly 15,000 gravitational units. Both are quaint. The scanner operator's voice cracked with terror. Sir, their hull composition doesn't match anything in our databases. I'm reading materials that shouldn't exist, crystalline matrices that seem to bend space itself. The energy readings are off every scale we have. Velthar stared at the human captain. No primitive species should know Imperial weapon specifications. The Empire's technology was classified at the highest levels. How do you know our weapon output? Velthar demanded. We've been observing your Empire for several decades, Captain Li Huan replied casually. Your technology is traditional. We were curious to see if our peaceful survey mission would encounter any interesting innovations. So far, we're disappointed." As if to emphasize his point, the human ship began to glow. A beautiful, ethereal, blue light emanated from its hull, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The light was so pure, so intense that it hurt to look at directly. Several bridge officers shielded their eyes and stepped back from their stations. "What is that energy source?" Velthar whispered. "Zero-point field manipulation," Captain Li Huan answered matter-of-factly. "We'll be continuing our survey now. Please move your ships to a safe distance." The human vessel's glow intensified, and space itself seemed to ripple around it. The emergency klaxons of 3 Imperial destroyers wailed across the void as they dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Velthar felt a surge of confidence as the massive warships Death's Edge, Voidcrusher, and Starbreaker formed a perfect triangle around the human vessel. Each destroyer carried enough firepower to glass an entire planet. Surely, this primitive human ship would surrender now. "Human vessel, you are completely surrounded," Velthar broadcast. "Surrender immediately, or face total annihilation." The response came from a different voice this time, female with the same unsettling calm as the previous captain. "This is Captain Kim Yuna of the UES Horizon. I've relieved Captain Li Huan for this portion of our survey mission." Through the view screen, Velthar saw a young human woman with sharp, intelligent features. Behind her, the strange geometric patterns on the walls seemed to pulse faster, as if responding to her presence. What caught his attention most was her expression. She looked genuinely amused. "Captain," Velthar said, trying to project authority, "you face 4 Imperial warships. Each one could destroy your entire homeworld. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to Imperial law." Captain Kim Yuna's smile widened. "Your ships use antimatter propulsion systems, correct? Magnetic containment bottles, matter-antimatter annihilation chambers, reaction mass expulsion?" She paused, as if consulting something off-screen. "Peak efficiency of roughly 42% energy conversion. How traditional." Velthar's blood ran cold. Those specifications were classified at the highest Imperial levels. How could this human know their exact propulsion technology? "Weapons Officer Zonkar," Velthar hissed, "coordinate with all vessels, full power barrage on my mark." Before he could give the order, something impossible happened. The human ship began to fade. Not like a cloaking device. Velthar had seen those before. The horizon became translucent, like morning mist. Its edges blurred and wavered as if it were transforming into pure energy. "Sir!" Sensor Officer Klixtar screamed, his scales now a panicked white. "The human vessel is phasing out of normal space-time. I'm reading quantum fluctuations that shouldn't be possible." The ghostly horizon drifted forward, passing directly through the hull of the destroyer Death's Edge. Velthar watched in horror as the human ship emerged from the other side of the 2-kilometer-long warship, completely unharmed. The destroyer's crew reported no damage, no breach. It was as if the human vessel existed in a different dimension entirely. "Fascinating," Captain Kim Yuna's voice carried across all frequencies. "Your hull plating is durasteel composite with molecular bonding. Agents, quite sturdy for your technology level." The horizon rematerialized behind the Imperial formation, solid once again. But now something even stranger began to happen. Space itself started to bend around the human ship. Velthar had seen gravitational effects before. Every ship with faster-than-light capability manipulated gravity to some degree. But this was different. Visible ripples spread outward from the horizon like waves on a pond. Stars in the distance appeared to stretch and curve as space-time warped around the human vessel. "What sorcery is this?" whispered Communications Officer Thelmos, his forearms shaking as he gripped his console. The ripples in space grew stronger. Velthar felt his own ship being gently pushed away by invisible forces. The 3 destroyers, each massing millions of tons, began drifting backward as if caught in a cosmic tide. "That's impossible," Velthar shouted, his voice cracking. "No species has mastered space-time manipulation. The theoretical energy requirements alone would—" "Admiral," Captain Kim Yuna interrupted patiently, her tone like a teacher correcting a student. Humanity has been observing your empire for 47 years. We've monitored your wars, studied your technology, watched your expansion across 17 star systems. She paused, and when she continued, there was something almost sad in her voice. We've found your technology rather limited. The gravitational waves around the horizon intensified. The human ship began to rise, not up or down since there was no up in space, but somehow higher, as if climbing to a different level of reality. The stars behind it stretched into streamers of light. Your fastest ships achieve roughly 12 times light speed, Captain Kim Yuna continued conversationally. Your most powerful weapons operate in the terajoule range. Your sensors can detect objects up to 50 light-years away. These are admirable achievements for your level of development. Velthar realized with growing terror that she was describing their capabilities with the casual precision of someone reading from a technical manual. How do you know this? He whispered. Because we've been watching you stumble around the galaxy, like children playing with dangerous toys, Kim Yuna replied, her amusement gone, replaced by something harder. Your empire has enslaved 14 species, strip-mined 43 worlds, and started 6 unnecessary wars in the past decade alone. The horizon began to accelerate. But calling it acceleration was like calling a supernova a campfire. The human ship didn't just move faster, it seemed to compress space in front of it and expand space behind it. Reality itself bent to carry. The vessel forward at speeds that made Imperial faster-than-light travel look like a leisurely walk. Impossible velocities, Sensor Officer Clickstar screamed. They're moving at 200 times light speed. 300. The hull stresses should tear any ship apart. The horizon streaked away, leaving the 4 Imperial warships floating helplessly in its wake, like toys abandoned by a child. Long-range sensors tracked it moving at velocities that violated every known law of physics, its hull somehow intact. Despite forces that should have reduced it to subatomic particles, Admiral Velthar slumped in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human ship had vanished. His communications officer was already transmitting an emergency report to Imperial Command, his forearms typing frantically. Across the galaxy, in the crystal spires of the Imperial capital, emergency lights began flashing as the most terrifying report in Imperial history reached the Emperor's War Council. Humanity was not the primitive species they had believed. The Imperial Science Complex on Thara Prime buzzed with frantic activity as Chief Imperial Scientist Mordan worked through his 3rd sleepless cycle. His laboratory, normally pristine and organized, looked like a war zone. Broken equipment littered the floor, melted scanner arrays sparked dangerously, and holographic displays flickered with impossible readings. Mordan's assistant, a nervous Zalarian with translucent skin, approached cautiously. Sir, the Emergency Council is demanding your report. They've been waiting for 6 hours. Tell them I need more time, Mordan muttered, his 8 tentacles manipulating different instruments simultaneously. These readings make no sense. According to our physics, what I'm seeing shouldn't exist. The energy residue left by the human ship defied every scientific principle the Empire had established over 10,000 years of galactic dominance. Mordan had run the samples through every scanner, every analyzer, every theoretical model in the Imperial database. The results were always the same. Impossible. Sir, his assistant pressed, Emperor Korthmax specifically ordered. Fine. Mordan's tentacles slammed against his workbench, sending crystal vials flying. Prepare the emergency council chamber and bring extra medical teams. Half of them will need treatment for shock when they hear this. An hour later, Mordan stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Imperial Emergency Council consisted of representatives from every major species under Imperial rule. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive sphere suspended in zero gravity, with council members floating at different levels according to their rank and species requirements. Emperor Korthmax dominated the center, his massive crystalline form pulsing with angry red light. Around him floated the military commanders, intelligence chiefs and senior scientists who had built the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Speak, Mordan. the Emperor commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber like grinding stone. "What did your analysis reveal about this human vessel?" Mordan activated his presentation hologram, and a three-dimensional model of the energy signatures appeared in the chamber's center. Several council members gasped at the swirling patterns of impossible colors and shapes. "Your Majesty, honored council members," Mordan began, his voice shaking, "what I'm about to tell you will sound like madness. The human vessel we encountered has somehow bypassed millions of years of conventional technological development." General Caxthor, commander of the Imperial fleet, scoffed. His insectoid features clicked with annoyance. "Impossible. Every species follows the same technological progression. First chemical rockets, then fusion, then antimatter, then perhaps hyperspace manipulation after 10,000 years of refinement." "That's what we believed," Mordan replied, manipulating the hologram to show energy conversion rates. "But look at these readings. While our most advanced ships harness antimatter reactions at 42% efficiency, the humans are manipulating zero-point energy." The chamber fell silent. Zero-point energy was theoretical, the quantum foam that existed in the vacuum of space itself. Imperial scientists had calculated that harnessing it would require technology millions of years beyond their current capabilities. "What does that mean in practical terms?" asked Admiral Velcor, her blue skin shifting to worried purple. Mordan's tentacles trembled as he expanded the display. "It means our plasma weapons, which can crack moons, are like throwing pebbles at a fortress. Their hull material doesn't just absorb energy, it converts it into more exotic matter, making their ship stronger with every attack." Intelligence Officer Kreltos floated forward, his cybernetic implants flickering with incoming data. "I have worse news, Your Majesty. Our linguistic analysis of the human vessel's designation has been completed." "Speak," Emperor Korthmax commanded. "UES Horizon translates to United Earth Survey," Kreltos reported, his mechanical voice echoing in the chamber. "The designation prefix UES indicates a civilian research vessel, not a military craft." The silence that followed was deafening. Several council members' biological functions audibly stopped, hearts skipping beats, breathing apparatus pausing, even cybernetic systems momentarily freezing. "Our civilian ship," whispered Defense Minister Thalamos. "That wasn't even their military?" Mordan nodded grimly. "According to our intercepts, it was conducting a routine scientific survey, the equivalent of one of our research probes, but with technology that makes our entire fleet obsolete." Emperor Korthmax's crystalline form blazed with fury. He slammed his massive fist against the chamber's central console, sending shockwaves through the zero-gravity environment. "Impossible! Our intelligence networks have monitored humanity for centuries. They've barely achieved faster than light travel. Their most advanced ships are primitive chemical rockets compared to our antimatter dreadnoughts." "Apparently not, Your Majesty," Mordan whispered, his voice barely audible. "Our entire understanding of human technological development has been wrong, catastrophically wrong. The implications hit the Council like a tsunami. If a civilian human research vessel could neutralize 4 Imperial warships without effort, what capabilities might their actual military possess?" Admiral Velcor spoke the question everyone was thinking. If this is their civilian technology, what might their military fleet look like? The holographic display shifted, showing theoretical projections based on the energy readings. The models were terrifying, sleek vessels that seemed to bend reality around them, weapons that could manipulate space-time itself, defensive systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Based on the technology gap we've observed," Mordan continued, "a single human military vessel might be capable of eliminating our entire Imperial fleet. Their weapons could potentially destroy star systems. Their defensive capabilities appear to make them effectively invulnerable to any weapon we possess." Commander Ziftos of Imperial Intelligence added his analysis. "Our spy networks throughout human space have detected no military buildup, no preparations for war. It's as if they don't consider us a threat at all." The most chilling realization of all settled over the chamber. Humanity wasn't preparing to fight the Empire. They simply didn't view the Empire as worthy of preparation. How many human vessels might exist Emperor Korthmax asked, his voice now quiet with dread. "Unknown, Your Majesty," Kreltos replied. "Our sensors cannot detect their ships unless they choose to be detected. They could have thousands of vessels moving through our space, and we would never know." Mordan added the final, terrifying detail. "The energy signatures suggest their technology is still advancing. What we encountered today may already be obsolete by their current standards." The Emperor's crystalline form dimmed as the full scope of the threat became clear. The Galactic Empire, rulers of 1,000 worlds, masters of technologies that had conquered countless species, had encountered something beyond their comprehension. Humanity hadn't just achieved technological superiority, they had transcended. The very laws of physics the Empire thought immutable. The question that hung in the chamber like a death sentence wasn't whether humanity could defeat the Empire. It was whether humanity would even notice the Empire's existence long enough to bother with conquest. The greatest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space. 10,000 Imperial warships stretched across light years of void, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Massive dreadnoughts the size of cities floated alongside swift destroyers, their engines burning like artificial stars against the darkness. Emperor Korthmax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a vessel so large it had its own weather systems. His crystalline form pulsed with determination as he surveyed the armada through the massive viewport. Behind him, his war council of the galaxy's most feared military commanders prepared for what they believed would be humanity's final hour. "Numbers will overcome their technology," the Emperor declared, his voice echoing through the ship's communication systems. "No species, no matter how advanced, can stand against 10,000 warships. Today, we remind the galaxy why the Empire rules supreme." General Vextaler, his 6 arms adjusting tactical displays, nodded agreement. "Your Majesty, even if their individual ships are superior, they cannot possibly match our numerical advantage. Mathematics itself favors victory." But as the Imperial fleet approached the Sol system's outer boundary, long-range sensors detected something that made the command staff pause. 12 contacts appeared on their screens, not the massive fleet they had expected, but a handful of vessels arranged in a perfect defensive formation. "Only 12 ships," Admiral Korthvan laughed, her scales shifting to amused green. "The humans must be insane. Do they think so little of our might?" The human vessels were unlike anything in the Imperial database. Sleek and organic-looking, they seemed to flow rather than fly through space. Their hulls appeared to be made of some unknown material that shifted between solid matter and pure energy, creating mesmerizing patterns that hurt to look at directly. The lead human ship was larger than the others, but still tiny compared to the Imperial dreadnoughts. Its designation appeared on their screens, UES Guardian. As the Imperial fleet drew closer, a transmission arrived on all frequencies. "Imperial Fleet, this is Admiral Park Jinho of the United Earth Defense Force." The voice was calm and professional, carrying no trace of fear, despite facing overwhelming odds. "You are trespassing in human territory. Turn around and withdraw. Immediately. This is your only warning." Through the view screen, Emperor Korthmax could see the human admiral, a middle-aged man with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to look right through the screen. Behind him, the bridge of the human ship was filled with strange technology that seemed to bend space around itself. "Surrender, humans," Emperor Korthmax broadcast across all channels, his voice booming with imperial authority. "You face the might of 10,000 ships. Your pathetic dozen vessels cannot hope to match the combined firepower of the entire Imperial Armada. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Admiral Park Jinho's expression didn't change. If anything, he looked slightly disappointed. "Emperor, you have exactly 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that, we will consider your fleet a hostile invasion force." The Emperor's crystalline form blazed with fury. "Destroy them all. Show these arrogant primitives the price of defying the Empire." What followed became known throughout the galaxy as the 17-minute war. The Imperial fleet opened fire with everything they had. 10,000 ships unleashed a barrage that could have cracked planets: plasma bolts, antimatter torpedoes, Gravitational bombs and exotic particle beams turned space itself into a deadly light show. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire star systems. The human ships simply weren't there anymore. They moved like living creatures, flowing through space in ways that defied physics. When Imperial weapons struck them, the human vessels became translucent, allowing the attacks to pass harmlessly through their hulls. Then they solidified again, completely undamaged. "Impossible!" General Vextala screamed, his 6 arms working frantically at his controls. "They're phasing in and out of normal spacetime. How are they doing this?" The human response was swift and surgical. Beams of pure silver light lanced out from the Guardian and its escort ships. Unlike the crude energy weapons of the Empire, these beams seemed to cut through reality itself. They sliced through Imperial shields like they didn't exist, penetrating armor that had withstood the test of centuries. But the humans weren't trying to destroy. Each silver beam targeted critical systems, engine cores, weapon arrays, life support systems, disabling rather than killing. Imperial ships began drifting helplessly through space, their crews alive, but their vessels completely powerless. The Starbreaker, a massive Imperial dreadnought, fired its planet-killer weapon directly at the human fleet. The beam was so powerful, it created visible distortions in spacetime. It struck 3 human ships simultaneously. The human vessels absorbed the energy and grew brighter. "They're using our weapons to power their ships," Admiral Corthvan whispered in horror, her scales turning white with terror. The human ships began to dance. There was no other word for it. They moved in perfect coordination, weaving between Imperial formations like schools of fish through coral reefs. Their silver beams reached out with impossible precision, and wherever they touched, Imperial ships went dark. Emperor Korthmax watched in growing horror as his invincible armada was systematically dismantled. Ships that had conquered worlds were disabled in seconds. Weapons that had broken the will of entire species were rendered useless by technology that seemed like magic. "Sir," his communications officer screamed, "we're losing contact with entire battle groups. The humans have disabled 4,000 ships in the last 10 minutes. The Emperor's flagship shuddered as silver beams played across its hull. Systems began failing throughout the massive vessel, not destroyed, but simply turned off as if someone had flipped a switch. When the last Imperial weapon fell silent, Admiral Park Jinho's voice returned across all frequencies. The human ships had arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the drifting remnants of the Imperial fleet. "Emperor," the Admiral said, his tone now carrying something that chilled Korthmax to his core. "Disappointment. We could have destroyed. You all. Every ship, every crew member, every trace of your existence could have been erased in the first minute of this engagement." The Emperor stared at the tactical display, showing his powerless fleet surrounded by the 12 human vessels. "Instead, we chose mercy," Admiral Park Jinho continued. "Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. You will be allowed to return to your territory unharmed. Consider what that means, Emperor. Consider what it says about humanity, that we had the power to commit genocide and chose not to use it." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of emergency systems throughout the Imperial fleet trying to restart their disabled ships. "You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal," the Admiral's voice concluded. "Use that time to think about what kind of galaxy you want to live in." Emperor Korthmax, ruler of 1,000 worlds, conqueror of countless species, stared at the human ships that had just demonstrated their absolute technological superiority, and for the first time in his existence, he felt truly small. The shuttle that carried Emperor Korthmax to the human flagship was the most humbling journey of his existence. For 10,000 years, other species had come to him, bowing before his crystal throne, begging for mercy or negotiating from positions of weakness. Now he was the supplicant, approaching beings who had demonstrated power beyond his comprehension. The UES Guardian grew larger as their shuttle approached, but something was wrong with the perspective. The ship seemed to shift and change size, as if it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What appeared to be a 2-kilometer vessel suddenly looked massive enough to swallow moons, then small enough to hold in his palm. "Dimensional folding," whispered his science advisor Mordan, his tentacles trembling. they've somehow compressed space itself into their hull structure. The docking bay they entered defied every law of physics Korthmax knew. From the outside, the opening looked small enough for a single shuttle, but as they passed through some kind of energy barrier, they found themselves in a hangar that stretched beyond the horizon. Thousands of shuttles could have fit comfortably in the space, yet somehow it all existed within the hull of a ship only kilometers long. Emperor Korthmax's delegation consisted of his most trusted advisors, General Vextalar, with his 6 battle-scarred arms, Intelligence Chief Kreltos, with his cybernetic implants gleaming, and Admiral Velthar, who had first encountered the humans. All of them, beings who had conquered worlds and crushed civilizations, now walked nervously through corridors that seemed to bend reality around them. The walls themselves were alive with patterns that hurt to contemplate. Geometric shapes that existed in more than 3 dimensions flowed across surfaces that might have been metal, crystal, or pure energy. Sometimes the delegation walked on solid floors, other times they seemed to be moving through space itself, with nebulae and star clusters drifting beneath their feet. "This is impossible," General Vextalar muttered, his 6 hands clenched into fists. "How can a ship contain entire star systems?" Their human escort, a young officer who introduced herself as Lieutenant Yoon Seri, smiled politely. "The interior exists in folded spacetime. We've compressed roughly 12 cubic light-years into a volume that fits within our hull. It's actually quite efficient for long-term missions." She spoke as if she were discussing the weather, not casually mentioning technology that violated every principle of imperial science. The meeting chamber they entered made Emperor Korthmax's crystal knees buckle. The room wasn't just large, it contained actual star systems. Miniature suns burned gently in the air around them, while planets the size of houses orbited in slow, hypnotic patterns. Galaxies spiraled lazily near the ceiling, their billions of stars creating a light show that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Welcome aboard the Guardian," Admiral Park Jin-ho said, rising from what appeared to be a chair made of crystallized starlight. He was flanked by 2 other humans, Captain Choi Mina, a woman whose eyes held depths like black holes, and Commander Han Seok, whose calm presence somehow made the impossible room feel almost normal. Emperor Korthmax tried to speak, with his usual authority, but his voice came out as a croak. This room contains actual star systems, pocket universes," Captain Choi Mina explained gently. "We grow them in our laboratories. They serve as both decoration and emergency power sources if needed. Each one contains about 10 billion stars." The casual mention of creating universes as decorations nearly made Korthmax faint. He steadied himself against what he thought was a wall, only to realize his hand was resting on the edge of a galaxy. "Please sit," Admiral Park Jin-ho gestured to chairs that materialized from nowhere. "We have much to discuss." As the delegation took their seats, General Vextalar couldn't contain himself. "How is any of this possible? You were primitives. Chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. How did you achieve this?" Admiral Park Jin-ho's expression grew thoughtful. "The same way every species should be allowed to develop, through curiosity, innovation, and the freedom to explore. We weren't held back by artificial restrictions or conquered before we could reach our potential." Commander Han Seok leaned forward. "We've been watching your empire for decades, studying how you operate. You find promising species, and either conquer them immediately or keep them primitive to prevent threats to your power. It's a self-defeating strategy. We don't want your empire," Admiral Park Jin-ho stated simply, his words carrying the weight of absolute truth. "We have no desire to rule over other species or control their development. What we want is for you to stop oppressing other civilizations and end your expansion wars." Emperor Korthmax's crystalline form flickered with confusion and fear. "What? What are you? What did humanity become?" Captain Choi Mina's smile held infinite sadness. "We're what happens when you don't restrict a species' development, when you let them grow and adapt instead of keeping them primitive out of fear. We're what every species in this galaxy could become if given the chance." The words hit harder than any weapon. Korthmax realized that humanity hadn't just surpassed the Empire technologically. They had transcended the very concepts of conquest and domination that the Empire was built upon. The galaxy needs gardeners, not conquerors, Commander Han Seok added quietly. Species that nurture growth rather than prevent it. Civilizations that help others reach their potential instead of crushing them under boot heels. Around them, the miniature galaxies continued their eternal dance, each one containing trillions of lives that humanity had casually created as room decorations. Admiral Park Jin-ho activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Thousands of species were marked in red, conquered, oppressed, their development stunted or stopped entirely by Imperial control. "This ends now," the Admiral said firmly. "You will withdraw from all conquered territories. Enslaved species will be freed. Your expansion wars will cease immediately. In return, we will help you transition to a sustainable government that serves your people rather than exploiting others." "And if we refuse?" General Vextaler asked, though his voice held no defiance, only curiosity. The three humans exchanged glances. Captain Choi Mina spoke first. "Then we will be forced to take more direct action. We prefer cooperation, but we will not allow the suffering to continue." The threat was delivered so gently, so matter-of-factly, that it was more terrifying than any declaration of war. The treaty negotiations took less than an hour. What choice did the Empire have? They were negotiating with beings who treated the creation of universes as casual interior decorating. The Galactic Empire became a protectorate under human oversight, its military restricted to defensive purposes only, its government restructured to serve rather than rule. As the Imperial delegation prepared to leave, Emperor Korthmax turned back to Admiral Park Jin-ho. "Why show us mercy? You could have simply destroyed us." The Admiral looked out through a viewport that showed not stars, but the swirling depths of the universe itself. "Because someone has to break the cycle. For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by fear and conquest. It's time for something better." As the Imperial shuttle departed, Admiral Park Jin-ho remained at the viewport, gazing out at the stars. Around him, pocket universes continued their gentle dance, each one representing the infinite potential that existed when species were allowed to grow freely. Humanity hadn't wanted this responsibility. They had been content to explore, to learn, to grow in peaceful isolation. But someone had to keep the peace. Someone had to ensure that other species would have the same chance humanity had been given. The galaxy had new guardians now. Not conquerors or rulers, but gardeners who would tend the growth of civilizations with gentle hands. In the depths of space, the first liberated worlds began to receive visitors, not imperial tax collectors or military governors, but human teachers and scientists ready to share the gifts of knowledge and freedom. The age of empire was over. The age of growth had begun. The end